Scott Lucas. This is World Unfiltered. It's now 6 months since our pilot broadcast on Deep Dive Politics. We never knew where we were going to wind up. But 6 months later, there's been a theme in a lot of what I've talked about with various guests that I've been thinking through. There is a tension for me between the man-made disaster of the world, the conflict, the wars, the poverty, the treatment of dissenters, the imprisonment of people for no charge whatsoever, and then at the same time having a sense of this can be better. How can this be better? And as we've been on that path, and thank you for joining us, from countries such as Belarus to Russia to the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, the Gulf states, and indeed back to my native country, the United States, I've been conscious of that tension and trying to navigate it. So at the same time, as in some of my own interviews, I'll say this is the greatest crisis for our generation, or maybe generations, still wondering exactly where are we going to get in and beyond that crisis. So it is a real pleasure today to welcome to World Unfiltered Ece Temelkuran. She has an extensive background covering all forms of writing, as a political writer, as a reporter and correspondent. Her publisher wants me to call her a political thinker, and I'm happy to do so. But doing this both in nonfiction and as a novelist, novels such as Women Who Blow on Knots, The Time of Mute Swans, her nonfiction, which she pursued even as she was a reporter and correspondent, an outstanding book called Deep Mountain Across the Turkish-Armenian Divide, a topic that we've covered on World Unfiltered, a topic about political prisoners, another key issue for us, and their hunger strikes, called What Am I Going to Tell You? Turkey, the insane and the melancholy. And then most recently, 2 books, which have gotten a lot of well-deserved attention, and not just attention because they're excellently written, because they navigate that tension that I've still trying to wrestle with: How to Lose a Country, the 7 Steps from Democracy to Dictatorship, and the recently published Together, 10 Choices for a Better Now. Ece Temelkuran, welcome to World Unfiltered.
Hello, Scott. Thank you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for all the kind words to describe me.
I thought I would start with, see, I've asked the question to previous people on World Unfiltered at some point when we've talked about some of those issues, those countries and issues that we've navigated. And I said, well, are you hopeful? And so I was struck when I read the opening to Together. The very first advice is faith over hope.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I have to go back to 2019 to tell the story of hope for me. After writing How to Lose the Country, I went around the world to give speeches about the book, to talk about the book and so on. And, the book was published in several languages. So I had the honor and the chance to listen from the audience as well. What do they think? And, how did they like the book? And what do they think about the current situation in the world? But then after almost every talk, every conversation, that question came up. So where is hope? The book was a little bit depressing because it was telling the reality. It was telling the 7 global patterns of right-wing populism, or this new messy form of fascism. So that question kept recurring, which made me think. And after a while, actually, I was a little bit pissed because, like, what is this hope thing? Like, why do they expect me to tell them about hope or to show them some hopeful perspective or whatever? I was thinking about that question when I ran into a woman, a woman older than me in Edinburgh Festival. She came up to me for a signature, and then she said, "You know what? Don't get mad at them when they ask about hope, because they're actually asking for something else." They're asking about faith, and this woman had this, cross hanging from her neck, and I thought when she said faith, I thought she was talking about religious faith, and I gave this know-all smirk and said that I'm not a believer, and she said, I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about faith in humankind. And then that I had to think about it for over a year. What does that mean? And what is the relation between faith and hope? I noticed that, people mostly all around the world, in fact, using this word hope as an emotional crutch. And then I thought, actually what they are asking for is a reason to act. Um, and that reason to act can only be faith, because we are going through times where hope is so scarce. And I also think that hope is a timid code for faith in humankind.
Mm.
So they were actually, as far as I can, you know, interpret, they were asking for a reason to believe in humans, in this world, and so on, so that they can act towards a better world. So yeah, and hope is a very fragile word for these harsh times, and faith is indisputable. And there's a good, part of the faith. You don't have to prove it, because believing is a choice. Believing in humankind is a choice, a moral choice, a political choice. Whereas hope, when you speak about hope, you are always obliged to prove that there is hope, which is quite hard at this point in history. So that is why I said faith should be the word that we hold on to, not hope. Yeah, that's why I said, the first choice in the book is choose faith over hope. And faith in humankind is one of the three central concepts in Together 10 Choices for a Better Now.
So the other thing that is notable, and I'm quite envious of this, is that with your ability to move across different ways of writing, different ways of communicating, Together has a very distinct storytelling style, which is different from How to Lose a Country. Is that storytelling in Together, indeed, drawing upon the background of being a novelist? Is that part of this faith, that you tell the story in a different way because you have to tap into something which is beyond, as it were, as the reporter's notebook, as we might say, beyond the how, what, where, when, and why?
Great question. Thank you for this. First of all, yes, it does, of course, help. Being a novelist, writing literature helps when you try to write about politics in a different way. How to Lose a Country was pretty much about realpolitik, whereas Together is a little bit of political philosophy and so on through storytelling. Before writing this book, I noticed something about our generation, or maybe the last 50 years of the world. I grew up in a time where two piles of books were getting bigger and bigger. One was the grand narrative, the grandiose discourse on politics, socialism, communism, whatever you call it. And then the other one was the deconstruction of that discourse, again with political discourse. So I wanted to go beyond this, and I wanted to write a political book without the political discourse. Um, I have been a political journalist, political commentator, and I have been writing political columns in Turkey for 10 years. And what I did then in Turkish was that talking about the politics of emotions, and uh, and then which made me notice, actually, the only way to go beyond the bubbles, beyond the discourse, and to reach more and more people is storytelling, is a little bit literary, putting literary writing in the realm of politics. Otherwise, what you write is limited to those who know the political discourse, one, and second, who are actually agreeing with you. And in this world where polarization has become a real social and political problem, I think we need a new narrative to talk about politics, and especially for the young generation, because they are not very familiar with the political discourse because they were born in 2000s, where even the deconstruction of the political discourse was passé already. So I think they all, especially the young generation, need a new political language, so to speak. And I am, humbly attempting to do that. I'm trying to bring about, form a new political language without the political discourse. So that's why it's a lot of storytelling, and stories have the habit of hitting closer to home. So I need to hit close, hit the, like, I touch the hearts of people very plainly. I have to put it very plainly. So yeah, that's why I wrote in the storytelling format, so to speak.
So, of course, storytelling, language is very personal, but you have a project which, in a sense, is communal. Reaching out to others, trying to build up the communal. So, what do you see as being distinctive about this discourse that takes us beyond the discourse that we've grown up in, which quite often has been one of division and of the other? What's distinct about the discourse that you're seeking here?
I am seeking a word. And that is the second concept, which is very central to together. I'm seeking a word, which in this book is dignity, uh, a word that can cut through the class differences and all the divisions of identity, politics, and everything. Identities, let's say. Um, it is not me inventing this word for together, the word dignity, but it is the word that I keep seeing all around the world, especially in those protests and in the new political movements, from Black Lives Matter to Hong Kong, from Gezi uprising in Turkey to Belarus. I keep seeing people voicing the same demand, and it is dignity. And it's ironic. We are living in a world where politics of pride, national pride, is making its comeback, and all the strong men, so-called strong men of the world, from Modi to Erdogan, from Erdogan to Trump, they're all talking about a broken pride, and they're all promising the masses to mend their pride, whereas all the other masses, uh, you know, as I said, from Black Lives Matter to Hong Kong to Belarus to Gezi and whatever, they're asking for dignity. I'm like, these two words, and that's another chapter in the book as well. These two words sound quite close to each other, whereas they're completely different, and they are representing a different perspective on humankind and therefore on world affairs. Um, so yeah, that is what I was seeking for, a word, and I think that word is dignity, and that word will shape the politics in coming 10 years, I think.
But I'm wondering if you hit a wall. Uh, I'm fully with you in terms of promoting dignity, but then, as it were, on the other side, that there is a message which comes out from these leaders, which isn't that, I don't like you, I don't care about your, quote, I wouldn't call it dignity, but your future. So make America great again. And
Mm-hmm.
dare I say it, President Erdogan, make Turkey great again, maybe even make the Ottoman Empire great again. In other words, how do you bring forth this dignity and a sense of connecting with each other when the counter message quite often is one, well, it's nationalism that gives you it's nationalism that empowers you. It's nationalism that makes you valuable.
The biggest difference between pride and dignity is that pride calls for violence,
Okay.
because in order to mend your pride, you have to oppress someone else. Someone else has to be inferior to you. That is pride, and that is why it's also considered a sin in every religion, because the violence is inherent in pride, whereas dignity calls for oneness of humankind, because once uh, if a dignity of a person, of an individual is broken, that means that the dignity of entire humanity is damaged. So dignity asks for human love in its essence, whereas pride asks for hostility. That's why all these leaders, when they are making something great again, they are creating a lot of hostility. It comes from the fact that they are asking for pride. They're, promising pride, and the violence that would mend the pride follows naturally. So that is the main difference, I think, in its very essence. One dignity asks for human love, and pride asks for oppression, be it violent or not so violent.
So with this centering on faith, um, taking this into discourse, into action, taking it into nonviolence, are you looking to be part of the creation or the development of a new political, social, cultural movement? Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, I am already part of it. I am on the advisory board of Progressive International. I'm honored to say that, although I don't do enough. Um, and also, but that is like, that is something that belongs to real world, the daily life and so on. Personally, yes, I do want to seek for a language that will bring people together and build communities, or not build communities actually, but I want to a little bit influence the political discourse that we are using today, which mostly stands upon urgency, shock, fear, anger, and so on. And I'm talking about progressive politics now. And I do think that it's another chapter in the book. Anger doesn't work because it has become a commodity. So we have to replace it with attention and so on. So yeah, I mean, like, that is why I chose 10 big words. I didn't talk about real politics, but I kind of gave the essence. I tried to give the essence of the world perspective that we might want to adopt in order to change the world and also change ourselves. Because I mean, like, we are individuals or societies that have been damaged by, especially by the this new wave of fascism, right-wing populism, whatever you want to call it. It's not only our political institutions that are damaged, but we are also damaged morally, because fascism does that to societies and to individuals. They erase the basic human consensuses. Maybe United States or Britain or France or whatever, they're not there yet, but in Turkey we experience this. Literally, the evil becomes the norm. The inhumaneness becomes the norm after after you experience fascism enough for enough time. So and I do think that several societies will come to this point where they understand that it all goes back to these fundamental concepts, and we have to maybe talk about those fundamental concepts in order to heal ourselves or cleanse the contamination of fascism in our societies and in our individual lives.
So let me juxtapose then the two books, because
Mm-hmm.
we just talked about a new movement, a new, at least, mobilization around discourse coming out of Together. But in How to Lose a Country, you actually warned that the first step towards the authoritarian or even the dictatorial are those who declare that they are creating a movement.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you ensure that this movement that you and I value, that's
Mm-hmm.
coming out of Together, is not actually falling into the same trap that creating a movement has led us towards in previous generations and even in recent years?
Well, I mean, like common sense, I would say.
Okay, okay, fair enough.
Well, I'm like, if you put your picture and Trump next to each other, and very short bios, I think we could understand that it's not Trump that we have to hang out with. But then, jokes aside, well, it wasn't a complete joke, by the way, but still. When Erdogan, and this goes for Trump as well, when Erdogan started his movement, uh, I was a journalist, I was a political columnist, and I had the chance to go around the country um, and talk to people who are part of this movement, which is a chapter I told about it in How to Lose a Country. And these people were coming from a conservative right-wing background. So they weren't coming from this tradition of defenders of democracy or human rights NGOs and so on and so forth. They were coming from a certain place, and they were carrying themselves the values, the set of values that right wing politics uh, accommodate. So actually, what they did during this very long and excruciating 20 years was that establishing those values as the norm in a country. So yeah, you know, you know, very quick look at the bio could tell us which movement is a movement, a movement to join actually.
Well, let me, if I could test that with Turkey, which of course you've
Hmm.
written about so eloquently.
Hmm.
You have called
Thank
it
you.
you've called it a fragile political experiment, which has
Hmm.
failed.
Yep.
Was there anything in that movement of the past 20 years that did have value? Anything in the experiment that you would say, yeah, this should have been tried, we just didn't perhaps implement it the right way?
Um, yeah, that was, the promise was not fulfilled, and the promise was a lie anyway. But removing the strong hand of army from administration was an excellent promise, which didn't at all, which isn't fulfilled at all. And also the Kurdish issue, that was another promise that many people fell for, actually, even those intellectuals who are considered to be progressive. Yeah, there were these, these were the two promises, as opposed to Trump. Yes, AKP had serious promises for
At,
Turkey.
at what point did you see the lie? Was it near the start after Erdogan
No,
rises
no,
to
no,
power in 2002, right from the beginning?
right from the start, actually, right from the
Yeah.
start, because I knew where they were coming from. I mean, like, I knew the political and social environment that this movement is coming from. And also, it's not me only. Anyone who knows about 1980s, and especially 1980 military coup, would know where they were coming from. And their ally, Fethullah Gulen movement, was also part of that history. These are the guys, let's say, that were utilized during the Cold War to struggle against communism. And they are coming from that tradition. And as opposed to their promise, actually, conflicting with their promise about army's strong hand, these entities, let's say religious and social entities, conservative entities, they were collaborating with the 1980 military coup and with the governments that followed. So they were actually pretty much supported by the state against the danger of communism before 1980s and after 1980s. So it was only, how shall I put it? It was only natural political process that these people, like Erdogan and his supporters, would be ruling Turkey, because rest of the political spectrum was cut out uh, through violence, through oppression, and yeah.
So where was the power of the lie? Was the power of the lie that people just didn't have enough knowledge to recognize what was going on? Or was it that they had the knowledge, but they actually felt, I'm going to get something out of this for myself? Or was it
All of
just,
it. all of
Yeah,
it. But how they came to power is another story. But how they stayed in power,
yeah,
yes, that is about, I'm going to get something from this. This is the thing, and it's happening in India as well, and several other places, of course, in Hungary, in Poland. It's the same thing repeating itself. As soon as these, right-wing populist leaders, or yeah, right-wing authoritarian leaders, they come to power, they build this enormous, enormous web of economic, no, financial distribution. It is something like a parallel state, actually, within a state. They use their political power to build an economic network that would carry them, even if their popular vote is zero, because that money, that capital, uh, does not only go to the first circle, it goes to the capillary system of the political entity, and it goes to the layman, it goes to the ordinary man. So they know at some point that if they let Erdogan go, or Modi go, or whatever, they're going to fall as well. So that web of money holds the authoritarian leader in power, and it can hold him fucking, sorry,
that's okay. I
quite a
fully
long
understand.
time.
I fully understand
And
it.
then this comes out. I'm sorry.
No, we like that. It's okay. Yeah, and I'm going to tell the director to keep that in. I mean, so it almost feels like almost the extended patronage, not for just quote an elite. It's an extended patronage through much of society, which
Yeah,
tries to bind.
but then I'm like, we have to understand. I'm like, this is one of the main. This was one of the main points in How to Lose a Country.
Sure.
This replacing social rights with charity is the problem. Once you start doing that, and once the society is accepting that, and then your social rights become the subject of charity, and that charity is in the hands of this one authoritarian leader. So it all comes back to, if there is no social state, democracy is impossible.
So trying to find a way beyond this, because we referred a little bit to the cases that aren't positive, like India, like
Yeah.
Orban in Hungary, and we could talk about
Yeah. Actually, Scott, I have to say something, and you said it in the beginning as well, or before the program. Optimism, hopeful, or depressing, or whatever. And this is a chapter in Together as well. I do not believe in this optimism, pessimism binary thing, and also I do not believe in this depressing or cheerful, making the reality, describing the reality in these terms. But then I do believe that if you see the whole reality, the entire picture, the reality cannot be depressive. It cannot depress you, because in whole reality there is the magic of the people, there is the resistance of the people, and people like us, let's say, when we are talking, we have this, how shall I describe it, we have this habit of describing the reality as if we are not included in that reality. You and I talking about this topic, and the audience who is listening to this topic is included in this reality, and we have the agency to change things. So yeah, intellectual conversations have this weird, I don't know, illusion. It creates the illusion, or we are living in that illusion when we are having an intellectual conversation about a society, as if we are not part of this society. We are describing the society as like, or politics, depressing and so on. But we are in it. You see what I mean? I'm like, I don't know if I
Oh,
make it clear,
no,
but yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, I think that's what's engaging about the work you're doing. It's something that's actually driven me, which is that we, it's not like we're bringing tablets down from the mountain. We're not even on the mountain. We're actually on the ground and need to
Yeah.
acknowledge it. But I guess that actually leads into what I was going to ask you, which is if you look, for the positive, if you look for possibility, do you see it in certain countries, in certain, as it were, national systems right now, or do you see it very much on the ground in people across countries, between countries that are having to
Both.
create this possibility? Yeah.
Both. Both. First of all, Turkey has been ahead of the curve of this new form of fascism. So I am seeing a lot of hope in Turkey in terms of politics.
Okay.
Because, and I wrote a piece about this to Financial Times. I do think that the new politics will be shaped around local uh, municipalities, and we have seen this happening in Turkey, in Izmir, in Ankara, and Istanbul, the big cities, and several other big cities, in fact, have been won by opposition politicians, and they're doing a great job. And they are now becoming little castles, so to speak, of the progressive thought, progressive people, progressive politics. The party politics, as we all know, in such countries like Turkey, it is paralyzed. It is the parliamentarians are almost irrelevant to the system, especially in Turkey. So this local politics has the ability to create new politics and to gather people around a more humane political thinking, let's say. And I see this trend happening in other countries as well. In fact, in United States during the pandemic, I remember New York behaving completely differently than what Trump, told them to do, whatever. And also in London, London is kind of resisting against Boris Johnson. Cosmopolitans are doing this, big cities. And now where I'm living in Zagreb, Možemo, a progressive leftist party, has won the local elections. And these people are coming from NGOs, intellectuals, students, and so on. So I think we're going to see this trend going on, and that's another chapter in Together. And I saw these, 19th century, 20th century political institutions as shipwrecks. And this new politics, new political thought, new politicians, new political activists, they will shoal around like fish. They will shoal around this wreck, and they're going to turn it into a reek. This, I think, we'll be seeing this. If I'm not wrong, we'll be seeing this happening more and more in other countries as well,
Has the
especially
pandemic
those countries subjected to authoritarianism and right-wing populism.
has the pandemic accelerated this possibility?
Well, I'm like, pandemic is a tragedy that lacks drama. So the drama was about Black Lives Matter or Hong Kong and so on. But yeah, it has, these such disasters, let's say, have the ability to crystallize the situation. So yeah, it actually did that. People saw that it's only the local politics that they can make themselves heard through local politics. So yeah, I think it did some, catalyst. How do you say catalyst? It did some catalyst effect. It did have some catalyst effect on the situation, on the political situation.
Setting it alongside this, there's been quite a bit of attention in the United States, as you would expect, to Joe Biden succeeding Trump.
Yeah.
This emphasis on pragmatism. Uh, some people have referred back to Angela Merkel, who's about to step out of power in Germany, as being almost that epitome of pragmatism. Where is there space? Is there that space for pragmatism as part of this new politics that you're talking about, rather than the divide, which I quite often see between idealism and pragmatism, or as the Americans tend to put it, the centrists versus the progressives?
Yeah, we are in several sorry, in few countries in Europe, and recently in United States, we saw that the center, kind of like a cliff. I'm like, it put its hand on the cliff and it's hanging there. And Merkel was the great symbol of centrism, and Macron hardly won, but he's a centrist as well. So, but then I think these are lost chances for center. It's not going to happen like that, and I don't see it happening like that because, and actually, United States make me think that way because I see that the specter of Trump is still haunting Washington. He's not there, and he was a reality TV guy, 8 years ago, and now he has a specter still haunting the White House. I told this in 2019 when How to Lose the Country was published. I gave a talk in Washington, I think, yeah, Washington, and I said, because I saw Americans thinking that, oh, if we get rid of Trump, it will be all over. No, it won't be all over because the post-truth era and the collapse of neoliberal politics, several other things, of course, the collapse of democratic institutions and so on, they are going to produce someone better than Trump in terms of, you know, better as in, you know, better in evil, sort of. Um, so yeah, yeah, I forgot the question, but I think this was
So
around it.
we always have a supervillain that we have to watch out for.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's just like what is it? The X-Men movie franchise never ends. So it is in politics as well. If I guess you just a couple of specific questions on sort of issues that challenge that new politics that maybe intersect with it. I was very struck by you talking about in terms of the past year, in terms of the openings, the catalyst that takes us to the local and the community. Yet I was struck that in the country where I now live, in the United Kingdom, if you go back 5 years, it was the fear of the other or the specter of the other that was whipped up. And this was true in many countries where immigration was whipped up to a point of. And how do we in that new politics recognize what has happened in terms of that use of the other and try to guard against that type of regressive politics, that scapegoats the migrant or the immigrant or the refugee as a way of taking us down the road towards authoritarianism rather than community?
That is why I'm like, I use this word a lot, dignity, because when there is dignity, there is no other. Um, I think what we have to do is to tell more and more the fact that if a black man is indignified, then the white man who is indignifying him damages his own dignity as well. There was an incident on Spanish shore a few weeks ago. A young woman, a young Red Cross volunteer called Luna Reyes, hugged a black man. He was just, he just survived from Mediterranean. He's coming from Africa, and it was like 21st century Hunchback of Notre Dame. She gave him water, and he was like, she gave me water, and he started crying, and he hugged her. This simple, very reflexive, and very, I don't know, how should I put it? It's like so tiny, a drop of humaneness created this immense wave of hatred and anger among the social media users who thought that they could mend their pride by putting down a black man. And several people told that, it would be better if he drowned in Mediterranean. So how did we come to this point where a small kind of a small act of kindness creates so much hatred? Um, I think it is because many people fell for this pride uh, fairy tale. I think we have to talk about dignity more. Dignity is very, as you can see, very handy and convenient word to solve several problems. It's only because it has human love in it. I am very, afraid of using this word, human love word, because I know it rings too naive to many ears, especially those who are, working on politics, thinking about politics. But then we might need to think about that word in the political realm as well. Um, and the reason I tell this, I'm like, the reason I thought about love in political terms was actually, I'm going back here, the local elections in Turkey. It was radical love that these, politicians, opposing politicians, it was radical love that they used during the election campaign. And it was healing for the community, and they became popular again, despite all the barriers, all the obstruction from the government. So it works. It politically works. In realpolitik, it works. Love works. Yeah, i- after seeing that it works, I can tell that if we do this more, if we emphasize that more, yes, we can diminish the weight of the other in our politics and in our societies.
You've been fighting the good fight for a long time. Uh, yeah, you have. But at times, I get tired, I get worn out, I wonder about going on. So beyond the advice and together, when 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 Ece Temelkuran gets tired and wonders if it's worth it, is there a favorite book or a favorite piece of music that you go to as a bit of sanctuary?
Oh, yeah. Uh, Books, basically.
Yeah,
And hardcore literature, like Clarice Lispector,
yeah,
Adam Brodsky, and yeah, Nazım Hikmet from Turkey.
yeah.
Uh, Fighting the good fight. I'm like, I'm not sure, because we're all writing, thinking about stuff, but you know, and I am defending the idea that words are events, like Hannah Arendt did once. But still, I mean, like, there are many, many people who are paying far bigger prices than I do. So I think they are fighting the good fight, especially in Turkey and in all other countries that's suffering from fascism.
Absolutely. But in tribute to all of those who fight the good fight, sometimes it is valuable to give voice to all of them, especially at times when they may not be able to speak. So I thank you for
Yeah,
that.
that's.
And I thank you
Thank you, Scott.
thank you for joining World Unfiltered. It has been such a pleasure.
It's
Let
my
me thank,
pleasure. Thank you so much.
I hope we can do it again. I really
Yeah,
do. And
sure. Why not?
there you go. Yeah, there you go. Oh, okay. Well, I booked a date, dear viewers, which I'll be looking forward to. But for today, let me thank you for joining Ece Temelkuran and myself. Let me thank the good folks at Deep Dive Politics for putting us on air and holding it all together. Let me just remind you that you can follow not only this edition of World Unfiltered, but previous editions and the other work of Deep Dive Politics, as well as our partner Panorama at the International Relations Council of Turkey. You can do that via Facebook, Deep Dive Politics, via Twitter, dive_politics. We're not quite as big as Ece's Twitter account of 2.6 million, but we're trying. And of course, if you would prefer to listen to this in your own space of solitude, rather than view it, all of our World Unfiltered broadcasts are also available on Spotify. But for now, stay sane, stay safe, and especially in light of today's conversation, be decent to each other. I'm Scott Lucas, and this has been World Unfiltered.